Welcome to the Health Fix Podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey health junkies, on this episode of the Health Fix Podcast, you get me, Dr. Jannine Krause. And so each Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a series where I am covering a little bit more on the topics that we talk about on the podcast, because I feel like there's a lot of clinical information I have in my practice and my knowledge to be able to share and relate to what you may be experiencing. So I just did a podcast with David Milburn and we talked about Hypo Air, the company that I love, their Air Angel, which is a portable air filtration and sanitization device. So you can put it in your car, you can take it while you travel, things of that nature. Now, let me give you a little background on environment and air and what I've seen in myself and some of my clients over the years. It's really hot to talk about mold and how mold affects our health. And it is a real deal. It is not just folks who are super sensitive and want to complain. This is a big deal. And as we get over 40, we tend to become more sensitive to certain things. Like maybe you're noticing more food sensitivities. Maybe you're noticing more environmental allergies and you never had those before. Mold is something that you can react to. And I found myself reacting to it when I was living in Tacoma. And now as I've moved to different places, I also find that I react to things if a home is particularly moldy. So what's going on? My barrel, if you will, I like to think all of us as barrels, we can handle a certain amount of things coming in, and at some point we overload. How do we overload? With histamines. Histamines are a normal neurochemical within the body that is a sign of danger, but it also helps you with digestion. So it's kind of one of those, you don't want too much of it, right? But you do want some of it. So we don't want to be completely blocking histamines because now we're going to mess with our ability to digest foods. But at the same time, when histamines are overloaded, we are starting to see rashes. We're starting to see swelling, so puffiness around the eyes. We're also starting to see that we may be smelling things more often and reacting, like getting a headache or just not feeling good. Or we may be noticing things like we are having more heavy periods, or we're getting more puffiness in the body that comes and goes. Maybe it's related to a cycle, or maybe it's related to an exposure to something. So in my personal experience, definitely want to give you my story. I found mold in my house in Tacoma, and I panicked because I have patients that have had some really severe cases where they have mood swings, they are having insomnia, they're just not feeling well. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I don't want to go down that route. Well, I did the testing, which is controversial. I used mold plates and I put them in my home and I let them be for an hour, came back, closed them all up, put them into a dark bag in a warm place and let it grow for a week. And the results were overwhelming in two places, my bedroom and in my kitchen, which makes sense, right? The kitchen can be a source, especially under the sink if there's a leak. My bedroom, we weren't really sure what was going on there. We figured there might have been something in the walls. Not sure. However, my house was built in 1914 and the foundation was leaking. We had a river through our basement anytime there was a major storm. So it made sense that there would be some humidity, something in the house. So is that the case in every home? Well, most homes, unfortunately, that have been built within the last 100 years are not built for helping with preventing mold. They're built for energy efficiency. So they can be like a quadruple, whatever the limit is of that, I don't know, but LEED certified, amazing, energy efficient home. But those folks are not thinking about airflow. And in 1914, they were not thinking about airflow. And even in my newer home now that I have that was built in 1990, they were wrapping them with plastic. That's a different story. I'll get there in a, in a little bit. So point being is that I knew I had to mitigate this because I was noticing I was waking up every morning with very big puffy eyes. Top of my eyelids were extremely puffy. I was feeling gross. My periods were getting heavier. Now here's the thing. Mold mimics estrogen. So if you're already in perimenopause and you're on a roller coaster of hormones and now you've got mold on top of it that you're reacting to, this can make things really intense. So period cramps, debilitating cramps, bloating, puffiness, changing, dress or pant size, if you want to think about that, couple, going up a couple sizes and back down based on where you are in your cycle. This stuff is real. And I really want folks to think about, like, okay, we sometimes poo-poo the idea of mold and sick building syndromes and things of that nature, but they really can impact us, especially as we get older or as we are young. A lot of kiddos have issues in this department, and I kind of wonder if maybe as a youngster I might have been also exposed, and that might be why I'm more prone to being able to really pick out when I walk in a building if I smell mold. My home here in Illinois, where I grew up, where I'm actually recording this podcast right now, I have definitely noticed mold. We've tested for it. It's positive, and I've had some issues. Now, here's the thing. You may be thinking, well, what do I do if practically every home has some sort of mold? Well, the good news is we can figure out how to prevent mold from overgrowing. We can figure out if we have an issue in the first place, and there's a lot we can do. Now, if you recall, I interviewed David Milburn from Hypo Air. Hypo Air does free air quality consults. Yes, they have air mitigation processes, they have different tools and tips and products, but a free call to learn how to improve your air quality in your home, priceless. So I first recommend checking in with them. The other thing is getting a humidifier, a dehumidifier or a humidity sensor, because you want to first know, like, is your area having an issue with humidity in the first place? So I have folks grabbing a sensor, or even those weather stations. You can see what the humidity is outside. You can see what it is inside. Those are also another great tool to be able to identify what's going on. And in our podcast, David recommends humidity. You want it to be under 61%, 65 on the high end. I try to keep my house under 60. And you know what that requires? I have to probably empty my dehumidifier about 2 to 3 times a day in the winter. That's crazy, right? My house is wrapped in plastic. It wasn't meant to help with airflow at all. And this is a thing, especially in the houses that were built in the 90s, early 90s. It was a thing to wrap houses in plastic. So if you have an early 90s house, you might want to think about that, because they were looking at energy efficiency, not airflow. That brings us to airflow. That is where David Milburn can really help you in terms of your flow of air through your house, your apartment, your condo, whatever it may be. I had to consult them because I had no idea what was going on with the airflow in my new house. And turns out that wasn't that great. So we had to work on a couple of things to strategically place our air filtration systems to get things better. So we have one in our living room, we have one in our bedroom, and then the Hypo Air lives in our kitchen to help with flow within the home. So looking at my notes really quick. Okay, so in terms of that, the other big thing a lot of folks think about is filters. So filters for your furnace. Always a good idea. We only change them sometimes once a year, once every 3 years when we remember. You want to be thinking about it more frequently. And depending on the severity of your sensitivities, you want to be thinking between every 3 months to every 6 months or so. Some folks, it's once a month, especially if the pollens are really something you're sensitive to. So these are things to really write on your list of to-dos as your home hygiene, if you will. Now, another biggie is having the air filtration devices. Like I said, the different places that I have them strategically placed, you want to be making sure that they are close to areas of outflow or inflow of air in your home. Some cases I have heard of folks living in apartments where the neighbor smoked and the air was coming around from the windows and getting into that person's apartment. That's awful, right? So how do you mitigate that? There's those kind of things. There's also people whose neighbors are smoking right outside of where their air intake is. So you want to be really thinking about your inside environment, but also what's going on around your home, your domain, and what your neighbors are doing. Another biggie that I've encountered with patients before is Glade plugins and synthetic scents in the home causing issues, but also in the neighbor's apartment. The scents are coming across from one bathroom to the other. Crazy, but these are how things are connected in apartments that I have no understanding of. And so what this gal had to do is work on filtration within her bathroom to filter out the synthetic scents coming through the bathroom. Crazy. How this happens, I don't know. So anyway, those are ways to be looking at, and there are multiple other things such as where your heating and cooling system are placed. Lots of technical issues. This is where David Milburn comes in from HypoAir, because I am not an engineer or airflow specialist when it comes to these things. That's what they do. Now, I am here to really help folks understand that, say you're getting older, say you're becoming more sensitive to the environment, and you're feeling like, man, perhaps have multiple chemical sensitivities. Maybe you do. Maybe you've been exposed to multiple things and your barrel is overflowing. What do we do clinically, like internally, to try to help the situation? Couple different things. One, I will test people for mycotoxins for mold. So that's a urine test. It comes through a company called Mosaic. It used to be called Great Plains Labs. We use them in my office for testing mold because it'll show mold toxins. Now, the other way to do it is something called the Cyrex Array 12, which is an antibody test in the blood to the molds. And that also looks at pretty much any kind of chronic infection that could be floating around in the body. So it's looking at yeast, it's looking at bacteria, it's looking at viruses. So if you're like, is there an immune component that I am hijacked by bugs in addition to mold? That's the test you want to look at. Now, if you are going, okay, I don't really know if I want to spend the money on the test, totally fine. Maybe you're thinking, well, how do I test my home? Air quality specialists that walk around with their wands and they're super expensive, waste of time. 9 times out of 10, they don't find anything because they're going to be pulling still molds from outside and inside. It's confusing information. I use the plates like I described. That is from a company, EC3. I'll put the links in my podcast notes at drjkrausend.com. Those guys, it's very basic. It's like $36 just to get a read, right? We're not going to know what specific type of mold is there. You're just going to see if things are growing. A lot of people will dispute that those are highly inaccurate. Fair enough. If you combine that with looking at your humidity and your humidity is over 65, you pretty much know that you could be harboring mold spores in your home. So yes, there's a lot of, where do we go from here? There's also ERMI testing, which is like taking a Swiffer wiper and you're wiping the areas where you see the mold and you're wiping your airflow intake and output vents and getting in there. And that'll tell you what you've got. Now here's the thing, there are some issues with inside outside molds and contaminants, and as David described in our podcast, those wipes could have already contaminants on them. Crazy, but I do get a good idea of how high things are using those, and I have used them, especially in apartments. I will use those. So when you're looking at this, I don't want to scare folks. Mold toxicity can sound super scary, and yes, in some cases it can be very, very detrimental to health, but there are things you can do. First and foremost, what I've learned in this, let's say, realm of helping folks is if the symptoms are an annoyance, meaning we're noticing period changes, we're noticing puffiness, but we're not having an impact to function of life.
There's just annoyance. I don't think we need to go super crazy. I think we can go on a mold detox and work on airflow in the home, fix the home air quality, and call it good. So what's the best way to detox mold? I like Cellcore. Cellcore is a company that I use regularly to help me to bind up molds and clear them from the system. The other one is Quicksilver. There is a whole mold detox protocol that a specialist in mold, Dr. Jill, created, and I will put that link there. I'll put Cellcore's link as well so you can see what is going on in those departments, because it is possible to mop up the mold spores and get them out of the system and just help you to feel better. Now you might be thinking, well, mold spores, where do they live? What's going on? Oftentimes they hang out in your gut, and they can hang out anywhere in your body, but oftentimes they're in the gut. They can be up in the sinuses as well. And so they can cause sinus issues, gut issues, and they can mimic things like SIBO, small intestine bowel, or small intestine fungal, SIFO symptoms, so gas, bloating, things of that nature, and then hypersensitivities with rashes and puffiness. More often than not, mold affects your hormones. So this can be, especially if you're still cycling, crazy hormone swings in terms of puffiness around the period, insomnia, and also having just mood swings that you can go real low and be really down the dumps, or you can be super, like, I would say, not wanting to associate with other folks, isolating in that case. So if that is happening to you, number one, like I said, go get your airflow assessed. Call HypoAir, find out what's going on with your home. Also, I would talk about your work environment because you spend a lot of time there. Some folks, it's not their home, it's their work that's actually causing the issue. Some folks, it's the car. I found mold in my car when I realized that my windshield was leaking. And I would venture to say that a lot of homes, probably in the Midwest or even in the Pacific Northwest, because of the amount of rain in the Pacific Northwest, or Midwest, the humidity, or South because of the humidity, those areas are more prone to having mold in cars. Or if a car's been in a flood, obvious, right? So things to think about in that department if you spend a lot of time in your car. So with mold, the treatments, I had mentioned Cellcore. I had mentioned that I sometimes also use Quicksilver. What types of treatments are these? What are they doing? They're meant to bind up the mold spores and pull them off the lining and then eliminate them through the system. Sometimes you can feel quite crappy during the process. So you want to schedule it. You want to make sure that you have time, maybe take a week off of work or do it over a long weekend to try to clear some stuff, and then back off during the week and heavier on the weekend. It sometimes takes a couple months, sometimes years of a low-level protocol to clear the mold from the system. Now, I do not claim myself to be a mold specialist. Dr. Jill, I can't think of her last name. It's Carnahan. There it is. Dr. Jill Carnahan. She's in Colorado, just outside of Boulder. She specializes in mold detoxing and things of that nature. I will put her contact there for you. I just am here to promote awareness on the subject. Yes, I do have a couple of patients that I work with, but when it gets really severe and you become to a point where it's hard to leave your home because you are not feeling good, you're non-functional in terms of you're so fatigued you can't get out of bed, things of that nature, you need higher level care. And in some cases, there are folks who are doing what is known as an EBU type of treatment, which is an ozone blood treatment, meaning you get your blood taken out, kind of like dialysis. They clean the blood, they expose it to UV light to sterilize it, and then they put it back in. Kind of sounds super crazy. I have had folks have that done and feel a heck of a lot better, but there are some risks with that. And things you want to be looking into if you have to go that route. And so some of the severe cases, I will go that route. Other cases, it's just about working on your airflow, working on your humidity in your home, getting a good deep clean of the home. Maybe someone else does it, not you, because that can be provoking. And then you'll start to feel better, along with working on the mycotoxins and things of that nature. Now, some people might have so much damage in an apartment, a home, etc., you have to get out of there. especially if it's Stachybotrys, which is black mold, toxic black mold. Now, more often than not, I haven't seen this to be the case, but I've had a couple patients who have completely remodeled their home, mitigated the situation, all is good. So you're looking for leaks, you're looking for your humidity, you're working on mold detox. Now, mold detox involves taking the biofilm and the biospores out of the gut, out of the body. We use things like silver, we use diatomaceous earth, we use binders. So zeolite, chlorella is actually a good binder too. And we take that and grab things and dump it through the system. Now, one of the things you want to be thinking about when you go through any type of detox is your lymphatic system working, and is your gut working? Are you able to urinate out things? Like, are you peeing okay? Like, are your kidneys okay? Those are 3 biggies, because if you have puffiness and you're getting puffy every other week or every month along with your period, that means your lymphatic system's not working optimally. Most people have terrible lymphatic system movement in their neck and upper body because of being hunched over computers and tech. So huge things to be thinking about. Now, what's my protocol? I have folks make sure all of those areas are moving well. I will have someone go see a lymphatic specialist or work on their lymph drainage massage. I will also have folks do rebounding to help move lymph, things of that nature. We got to make sure your bowels are moving, so we got to work on that. So oftentimes we'll do a liver and lymphatic clearing. This is why I like Cellcore, because they have the kidney, liver, and Lymphactive is the name of it, protocol to clear all that out. Then you move into clearing the mold, because if those areas aren't moving, things are going to hang up. The other area of hang up is within your cells. About 50% of the population has a methylation defect that prevents them from fully taking out cell trash in the processes of normal life, meaning they're easier to end up having detox issues. So if we go to that level, and usually these are your folks, so if you are finding that if you have mold issues and you are really fatigued, you can't get out of bed, you're having trouble functioning, your moods are maybe having you where you want to isolate and not go out into public, you may have a methylation defect. You can test your DNA. There's easy ways to do it. Even 23andMe, which I know has gotten a bad rap, they will look at methylation. If you've done it a long time ago, like a couple years ago, they were looking at methylation. New ones, they are not doing it. So if you did it as a part of a package back in the day, you can get those SNPs and you can go to geneticgenie.org and you can download your raw data, which it'll show you if you have MTHFR, which is the methylation series of genetic defects. Now, that's a whole completely different podcast. I'm just going to say it's wise to know your genetics if you are struggling with chemical sensitivities, mold sensitivities. And in fact, I have to admit that the older I get, the more I feel like genetic information can be useful to just really hone in and target and not play around with where we're going in directions with protocols when it comes to supplements and optimizing the body. So that being said, if you're looking at, do I maybe have mold issues going on? Am I becoming sensitive because of issues like this? The number one thing you want to do is get an assessment of what's going on in your home first, so you can clean up the environment that you're in most of the time. Work may be trickier, but it's also something to consider. HypoAir will definitely help you in that department. It's hypoair.com/consult. And it'll be in my podcast notes at drjkrauseND.com. Because you've listened to this podcast, HypoAir also is giving you a discount. You can enter the code HealthFix, HealthFix, to get, I think it's like 10% or something off of any of their products, which is nice of them for helping you out for listening to the podcast. But nevertheless, I'm more wanting folks to look at their air quality in their home and get an assessment of it. This is so important. Even if you're not experiencing symptoms, this is optimize your health stuff here. Huge, because your air quality has a lot to do with how you feel and how you function and how your hormones stay in balance till you get into menopause and beyond. Once the hormones stop fluxing so much, it might not be as much of an issue. But then we start in with the rashes and other things that can happen with mold toxicities. So be careful. And the idea is get your answers. Know what you're working with. I highly recommend knowing the humidity in your home. And if you live in the South where it's humid, if you live in the Midwest where it's humid, or if you live in the Pacific Northwest where it just freaking rains all the time, probably could say East Coast too. Really, unless you live in a desert. But here's the thing. I've also seen mold issues in the desert too. So point is, anybody who has a house, apartment, lives in a home, it's time to look at things and see what's going on. Even campers can have their own issues. Talk to HypoAir. Now, working on your air filters regularly, not just every year, and really making sure you're getting a high quality one. Looking at your air filtration in your home and the systems you use. HypoAir has their own. There are other companies out there that you can look at as well. So, the point being here is you spend a lot of time in your home, you spend a lot of time in your workplace, and if your home and your workplace are the same, even more important to get a look at your home air quality, because these can affect, the air quality can affect lots of things in your life, right down to your sleep, which is what I'm going to be talking about next week in my mini series, and how I'm addressing sleep in terms of sleep supplements to help folks while they're working on rewiring their brain when it comes to sleep. So for all the things I've noted in this podcast, head over to drjkrauseND.com, episode 474, and you will learn all of the tidbits that I'm using to help folks to regain balance with mold toxicities and chemical sensitivities in their environment. All right, stay tuned for the next episode where I am going to be talking about sleep in more detail. Have a great day, whatever you're doing.
Hey, Health Junkies. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Health Fix podcast. To help support my mission to bring you tips, tricks, and tools to help you optimize your health, I'd be grateful if you'd like, subscribe, and write me a review for the podcast. And if you hear a product you're interested in on the podcast, you can now go over to my website to learn more. That's doctor spelled out JKRAUSEND.com. Just click on shop and you'll find all the information on my favorite products that I stand behind and use myself. All affiliate income earned with your purchases goes directly to help support the production of the podcast so I can keep bringing you quality health information. I appreciate your support and am honored to have you listening to my podcast as a fellow health junkie. Thanks again. Hey, fellow health junkie. Thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.